Convenience. Convenience is often considered a measure of civilization's success. Others warn there's a dark side to some of the modern marvels that make life so much easier. The pursuit of convenience has driven wonderful technological advancements, from the invention of the washing machine in 1908 to the electric dishwasher in 1924. As a scientist, I adore innovation and proudly identify as a technophile. Where would we be without the invention of the remote control in 1950? Having to stand up and walk 3 feet to change the channel, that's where. Time-saving gadgets and services have proliferated, promising us more leisure and less effort in our daily lives. However, the question arises, what do we sacrifice for this ease? Do we lose the essence of human connection, the satisfaction of manual labor, or the health benefits of physical activity? These questions have been debated for decades. Recently, though, a more critical issue has emerged, posing a significant danger beyond merely promoting sedentary lifestyles. This new threat is far more sinister. It is invisible, as it comes from the molecular level, known colloquially as the forever chemicals. PFAS is short for per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They are a class of almost 16,000 chemicals found in food packaging, carpets, nonstick pans, personal hair care products, and even clothing. PFAS are found in most Americans' blood and are linked to cancer, among other serious health effects. Of all the products containing these forever chemicals, the most alarming are those products that make contact with or are in our food supply. To address this threat, we must first understand it. So let's talk about it right here on the Carnivore Science Channel. Hi, I'm Liz. Welcome to the channel. I'm a medical technologist and pharmaceutical chemist with over 30 years of experience in the health sector and pharmaceutical and medical device industry. Today I'm here to talk about something kind of dark. We're going to talk about forever chemicals. I don't want to bury the lead, so let's get into this. Okay, first of all, what is per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS? These are what is called, or what is known as, the forever chemicals that everybody's talking about. Let's look at, this is the FDA website, and while there's a lot I don't trust about the FDA, there's some pretty decent information here. So, and you can see here at the start of this article that the FDA has issued, or not article, but I mean they're posting, the FDA has issued a request for information on PFAS in seafood to increase our understanding of the potential for PFAS exposure from seafood and to reduce dietary exposure to PFAS that may pose a health concern. RFI submissions are due by February 18th, 2025. So this was a while ago. So they're requesting information from the public or from industry. More like it. They're asking them to submit what they know based on studies. So there's a lot that they don't know about the damage that this stuff can do to the human body. There's a lot they do know, but there's a lot they don't know. So per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances are a diverse group of thousands of chemicals used in hundreds of types of products. PFAS in the environment can enter the food supply through crops and animals grown, raised, or processed in contaminated areas. It is also possible for very small amounts of PFAS to enter foods through food packaging, processing, and cookware. This is why we're talking about this. Because exposure to some types of PFAS have been linked to serious health effects, we are working to better understand PFAS in foods. Since 2019, we have advanced testing for PFAS in foods by making available the first single lab validated scientific method for testing 30 different types of PFAS in highly diverse samples of foods. optimized our testing method for use in processed foods, extended our testing method from 16 to 30 types of PFAS. There's a lot of chemicals in this family. It's a huge class. Tested nearly 1,300 samples of foods on the U.S. market, provided technical assistance to states, including testing over 400 samples from foods not on the market, grown, raised, or processed in known areas of contamination. Conducted human health assessments for individual PFAS detected in 174 samples, including from foods on the U.S. market and foods tested as part of FDA's technical assistance to states. Analyzed post-market scientific data on certain short-chain PFAS and negotiated voluntary market phase-outs. In February 2024, the FDA announced that all grease-proofing agents containing PFAS are no longer being sold in the U.S. And in January 2025, the FDA issued a notice in the Federal Register announcing its determination that 35 food contact notifications, FCNs, related to the PFAS containing food contact substances as grease proofers applied to paper and paperboard for food packaging are no longer effective based on the abandonment of these issues. 2024-2025, we will continue to test foods from the general food supply with a goal of accurately estimating U.S. consumers' exposure to PFAS from foods. This includes testing TDS samples and a survey of bottled water. Bottled water has had, I'm going to stop there and not keep going because it's in so much stuff. Bottled water has been looked at for a while because of BPA. So BPA is one of these, it's in this group. It's bisphenol A, and it's a chemical produced in large quantities for use primarily in the production of polycarbonate plastic and epoxy resins. NIEHS and NTP support research to better understand potential health effects of exposure to BPA. This is from the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences. Bisphenol A is a chemical produced in large quantities for use primarily in the production of polycarbonate plastics. It is found in various products, including shatterproof windows, eyewear, water bottles, and epoxy resins that coat some metal, food cans, bottle tops, and water supply pipes. How does BPA get into the body? The primary source of exposure to BPA for most people is through diet. While air, dust, and water are other possible sources of exposure, BPA in food and beverages accounts for the majority of daily human exposure. Bisphenol A can leach into food from the protective internal epoxy resin coatings of canned foods from consumer products such as polycarbonate tableware, food storage containers, water bottles, and baby bottles. The degree to which BPA leaches from polycarbonate bottles into liquid may depend more on the temperature of the liquid or bottle than the age of the container. BPA can also be found in breast milk. So why are people concerned? One reason people may be concerned about BPA is because human exposure to BPA is widespread. The 2003-2004 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, conducted by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, found detectable levels of BPA in 93% of 2,517 urine samples from people 6 years and older. The CDC, NHANES data are considered representative of exposures in the United States. Another reason for concern, especially for parents, may be because some animal studies report effects in fetuses and newborns exposed to BPA. So this is something you've probably heard more about, the bisphenol A stuff, because that's been going on for quite some time. And most of the plastic bottles, they use different materials now to get rid of all the bisphenol A. But if you think about all of the different materials that are used in carpets and fabrics and just everything. I mean, and then you look at everything that's in plastic. I mean, our nation, we're just full of plastic. The entire world is just, there's plastic everywhere, and it's used in everything. And when you look at the origins of when plastic came on the scene and people started using plastic containers and disposable things, this is a big boon for being more hygienic or sanitation. With respect to things that you can dispose of, especially for the healthcare industry. Because think about syringes. Now you have disposable aseptic syringes. You have syringes that are sterile, and they're sold in like packets, and you can throw them away and use a new one. This is the disposable nature of the plastic industry made a lot of things better. But there's a lot of drawbacks. One of these drawbacks when it comes to plastic is that there a lot of the industry, a lot of the healthcare professionals that, like, say, do autopsies, the pathologists and things like that, and people doing research, they're finding something called, it's nanoplastics. It's extremely tiny amounts of plastic in blood clots and in blockages. So when they find say your arteries are blocked or clogged, and they do analysis on it, there's a lot of microplastics there. So when you look at innovation with respect to this disposable side of life, where you have a much more hygienic, we're reusing, you have things that are disposable, and it's good in that respect. But a lot of times, like, they do things and they move forward in technology without knowing exactly what the repercussions are. So when a lot of this stuff was made, like a lot of the industry, like, they didn't ask the possible questions with respect to risk assessment. Risk assessment is something that we do in the industry for anything that we create, anything that we develop. You basically sit back and you come up with a profile, and you ask every conceivable question. No matter how, like a lot of people will look at some of the questions and go, well, why would you ask that? Or why would you worry about that? Well, you worry about that because the things that we don't know are the things that we don't know. And if we don't challenge every avenue and look at every possible outcome and really analyze what are the potential effects, like, do we know if doing this is okay? How do we know that? And I think, how do we know that things won't leach into the water if you're going to use these bottles for water? I think they looked at some of this, but science, a lot of times when things are you've got innovation, and you've got improvements, and you've got leaps in technology and all that kind of stuff. The questions, the questions that seem the dumbest, like, that seem like they're obvious, aren't really looked at that hard. It's you get caught up in all of the innovation and stuff. So a lot of the materials that they use, they're not looking at off-gassing. They're not looking at things like, are you going to breathe a lot of this particulate, and what are the particle sizes of things? What if you heat it? Because one of the biggest things in chemistry is that you can have something that's room temperature that's not going to cause harm, but if you heat it, it turns into a completely different animal. Like, you convert substances when you add heat. You also increase leaching. So there's a lot of variables, to look at when a new product is made, or when they come up with a new fiber for a carpet. How much testing is done to see what type of particulates are released into the air. What are we breathing in? What is it doing to our lungs? And the thing about these forever chemicals is that they don't degrade. So, and that's a little scary. Like, when we look at something being in our body that we can't get rid of, and, it's being found in our bloodstream. So just like the microplastics. So, but this is not something, like, when you look at all this, excuse me, when you look at all of this, it's not like this is new and this is all of a sudden. I mean, industry has been having problems with a lot of the things that they innovate, and a lot of the products that they make, because they don't really look into whether or not they should do something. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, or you shouldn't rush it and that kind of thing. But I mean, this is industry. It's the nature of the beast. For example, if you look at, this is a Time article, and this was from I wanted to see the date on it. June 1st, 2023. So companies knew the dangers of PFAS forever chemicals and kept them secret. Anybody surprised by that? No. This is 3M. I mean, come on. Anybody that thinks that, by the way, anybody that thinks corporate means, it comes from the word corporeal. Anybody that thinks that corporate America, or corporate anything for that matter, gives a crap about health, about benefits to mankind overall, you need to wake up, because that's not how the world works. I mean, granted, they don't want to kill everybody instantly or anything because it's bad for business, but that's why they don't want to kill everybody instantly. I mean, I'm not being too cynical. I'm just saying. Maybe I am being a little too cynical, but I've been in corporate America for a very long time. So 3M, along with DuPont, are the targets of a new study alleging decades of covering up the dangers of PFAS. The female employees at the DuPont Chemical Company's Washington Works plant in Parkersburg, West Virginia, were not given much of an explanation in 1981 when they were all abruptly moved away from any part of the factory that produced a category of chemicals then known as C8. They certainly were not told about their 8 recently pregnant coworkers who had worked with C8 and given birth that year, one of them to a baby with eye defects and just a single nostril, another to a baby who had an eye and tear duct defects, and a third with C8 in its cord blood. And yeah, this gets, when you look at the birth defects, I work obviously with the Food and Drug Administration. I've worked with them for years. I really was a believer in the administration early on because of the origins of the Food and Drug Administration, because of the thalidomide disasters of, the early days of the organization, when it was formed because so many people were there, all the birth defects, the different products that caused all the problems, and the regulation that fixed that, it stopped the public from being harmed. This type of regulation where you make things, you do certain rigorous testing before you actually just go out and make things. It used to be that like clinical trials were really set up there to protect the public. And once upon a time, they were independent and ethical. That's not the case anymore for the most part. And it's very sad. But this type of thing, when you see these birth defects caused by exposure or a product that's not made correctly, it's just very sad. But continuing on, for any employees with any doubts, the company took pains to offer reassurances that all was well. During the period that C8 has been used at Washington Works, a memo to the staff read, "There is no known evidence that our employees have been exposed to C8 at the levels that pose adverse health effects. There is a dose level where almost every chemical, even water, becomes poisonous. C8 has a lower toxicity, like table salt." I know, it's evil incarnate. C8 is today defined as two chemicals, PFOA and PFOS, that are part of a class of more than 12,000 substances known collectively as PFAS, short for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, also known as forever chemicals, because that's pretty much how long they linger in the environment. PFAS are used in thousands of products, from textiles to nonstick pans to cosmetics to firefighting foam to food packaging and more. The chemicals have been linked to a host of physical ills, including decreased fertility, high blood pressure in pregnant people, increased risk of certain cancers, developmental delays, and low birth weight in children, hormonal disruption, high cholesterol, and reduced effectiveness of the immune system. So, and then to go back, it goes back a little bit further into, it was first developed in the 1940s and was not until the late 1990s that the public knew about the dangers they pose. But according to a new study published by the Annals of Global Health, DuPont and 3M, the leading manufacturers of chemicals, had preliminary evidence of PFAS toxicity as early as the 1960s and knew broadly about the dangers the chemicals posed by 1970. So that's a very long time. And each year, like they're making more and more and more products, and we're literally just coated in this. And that's why I was talking about convenience, like all of the new manufactured items, all of the different things that, we're either wearing or using or breathing in. I mean, it's it's the amount of growth and the amount of chemicals that are offered, the amount of chemicals available and used in manufacturing facilities, globally, is just monolithic. And the process by which a lot of these things are used is not, I mean, you have control of certain things, like OSHA will come in, and if you're using a solvent that is a carcinogen or a mutagen or something like that, and you're not using it properly, you'll get in trouble for it, because that's meant to protect the public or your workers or whatever. But, there is so much of it. There's absolutely no way that they can really understand the impacts of all of these, because you don't have, I mean, they don't bathe people in chemicals and use them as guinea pigs and find out how sick this is going to make them. That's not a thing. So you have random studies, you have studies that are basically funded by the companies that are pushing use of certain things. There's a lot of conflict of interest. It's just that our system, when it comes to this kind of thing in these agencies, is just extremely corrupt. It has been for a long time. So, and plus, even if it wasn't corrupt, even if they were the salt of the earth and little angels, they wouldn't be able to handle all of this anyway. It's too big. It's huge, and technology is just, growing by leaps and bounds. It's such a fast pace that even if you tried to keep up and you tried to govern and monitor all this, it would be nearly impossible. So, when you look at what they're doing, they're trying to do what they can to get rid of this stuff for the most part. But a lot of this is, when you look at this market phase out of grease-proofing substances containing PFAS, it says, following the voluntary phase-out commitments, the FDA issued a notice in the Federal Register in January 2025 at 35 food contact notifications related to food contact substances containing PFAS in paper and paperboard food packaging are no longer effective. So it says the agency determined that the FCNs are no longer effective because the manufacturers or suppliers have ceased production, supply, or use of the food contact substances for their intended use. So a lot of companies are voluntarily abandoning a lot of this stuff because, like I said, I mean, they know what's coming. I mean, they know that this stuff is harmful. They know it has been for a while. So they're you have a lot of people voluntarily, or a lot of companies voluntarily stopping it. There were, I believe, and I'm just going off of memory on this, but I think one of the butter manufacturers, there was one recently that's very popular, and one of the variations, it was either salted or unsalted, there were PFAS in the wrapper, and what had contact with the butter. And that's terrible. Like anything but if you look at food, just think about it for a minute. Think of everything is packaged in plastic. For obvious, shelf life reasons, for sanitary reasons, for, reusability, storage. So everything's in plastic. Just think about that a little bit and think about what the danger might be. Because if you have people, the thing about food, you've got people eating all kinds of different things, eating fast food, frozen food. You've got all the chemicals. It's basically a stew and a soup. And now you have chemicals that could leach into that food. And you've got all kinds of different wrappers and all kinds of different chemicals involved in that. How on earth could you identify if it's causing illness or sickness? Because basically what you're studying is a human who is consuming, all these different dangers, or all these different dangerous, potentially dangerous substances. How on earth are you going to figure out or isolate what exactly is causing the problem? It's going to be nearly impossible. That is the reason, as a scientist, scientific studies are controlled. You have a control that's not affected, and you have whatever the subject is that you're watching or that you're monitoring and measuring. And the thing with the food supply being so laden with chemicals and being such a wild, just a mixed bag, I don't even understand how a lot of times that we can even figure out what's doing the damage, to be honest. Now, when you're actually finding this stuff, you're finding particular defects, and you're finding like what they're saying, the blood is tainted with this C8 and all this kind of stuff, and they're seeing it in most humans, and then you see certain particular types of defects, maybe. But it is very, very crazy. The one that when it, and don't get me started. I'm not even going to go down this rabbit hole, because food chemical safety, the way the FDA handles this, and again, it has a lot to do with the industry. There are so many chemicals and so many products, and it's just monolithic. The FDA ensures exposure to chemicals in food is safe. This includes chemicals authorized for use and in foods during food packaging, processing, or other handling. Contaminants enter the food supply through the growing or processing environment. Food manufacturers also have a major role in food chemical safety. The food industry has a responsibility to minimize or prevent hazards from contaminants and ensure the safety of chemicals they use. So a lot of this, when it comes to food is just very lax. Basically, a lot of the stuff, if somebody wants to use some new ingredients and stuff like that, and I've been over this a lot in other videos, they basically petition the FDA. They send, hey, our stuff is, hey, we want to use this stuff. Hey, no, it's safe. I promise, swear. And they submit whatever they submit, and somebody looks at it, and it's just very half-ass. It's like there's not elaborate testing that you can prove via third party. It's not like which nowadays a clinical trial for a drug is very half-assed as well. I mean, they're not pursuing drugs that actually fix anything, to be honest. So it's very corrupt too. But back in the day, the premise of a clinical trial is it was very controlled and done properly. But food, forget about it when it comes to additives and things like that. So one of the things that I wanted to look at this. Now, one of the things that worry me is obviously the plastic. So I would like to, I don't, it's very hard. I mean, can you imagine not putting your leftovers in anything? I mean, we use Ziploc bags and Rubbermaid containers, and just imagine none of that. I mean, it's difficult. But one of the things that you can do is, like I said, if you don't heat anything in a plastic container, don't ever heat a plastic container, don't ever heat a plastic bag, don't ever heat a plastic cup. That is part of the process of actually causing leaching. And when you don't know what things you can trust, what you can't, avoid heating anything in plastic. Do not heat plastic. And even like there are paper plate. We get paper plates sometimes, and they're coated in some kind of wax like type substance to keep them from leaking. God knows if you heat up a paper plate, I don't even know what's coming out of that. It's like you can't get this information. All this stuff's proprietary. So it's not like you can go read the ingredients on any of the containers. You can read ingredients on food, but you can't read the ingredients on any container that you're using. You don't know how they make it, or what they make it out of, or what the impact is. But this is a good one on, this article is a good one on the pans that we use, because as carnivores, if you're a carnivore, and that is a lot of what this channel is about, and if you're curious about carnivore, I've got plenty of videos on the subject. But as a carnivore, you cook your own food all the time. And one of the things that I started to notice is that all of the pans suck. And a lot of them that I was getting ended up being ceramic coated pans. And you know what I wonder about that? And this is just conjecture. So, what I was wondering about the ceramic pans, because I'm not going to buy the nonstick because of the obviously the forever chemical danger, because Teflon pans is a biggie. Like, that's where you hear a lot of this, that people are worried about getting Teflon pans. And that was like amazing when Teflon pans came out. It was like, oh my God, it was like, oh, because if you ever had to, I don't know, scrub the crap out of a cast iron pan or whatever it was that your grandma used for 3 hours after trying to cook something, I mean, a Teflon nonstick pan was just amazing. But, when it looks too good to be true, it probably is, So, when we started realizing all this forever chemical stuff, they started coming out with PFAS free pans. and that kind of thing. And a lot of them are ceramic, but I started to wonder, like ceramic, if you think about the nature of ceramic, like as that degrades and it starts to chip and like you get scratches and things, I wonder if there's micro ceramic particles or particulates that are coming off of that and, could cause a health hazard. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no way of knowing, but it's just interesting. I mean, now it's like everything you look at is freaky. So you can't always trust the claims of non-toxic cookware. Now, this goes back to playing with regulations and what requirements are and that kind of thing and how you phrase things. This goes into a little something called label claim. So label claim has always been a big deal in pharmaceuticals and or dietary supplements. Like you can't claim something that you can't prove, essentially, so to speak. That's all I'm going to say about that. But anyway, it goes back to that. So we tested the coatings on Swiss Diamond, Always, and red copper nonstick frying pans to see if they're really safe, or really free of PFAS chemicals. So as you see, they've scratched up these 3 different pans. If you shop for nonstick cookware recently, you may have noticed labels meant to indicate that your new frying pan is free of certain hazardous chemicals. It goes into PFOA, one of the blah, 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 blah. We already went over this. It's talking about risk in humans. And it also includes PTFE, the coating on many nonstick pans that was introduced in the 1940s as Teflon. Growing research suggests that many of the compounds used to make that coating may also pose health risk. To see if nonstick pans that are claimed to be PFOA free really are, and if consumers can rely on other, and this is a Consumer Reports, by the way, article, to see if nonstick pans that are claimed to be PFOA free really are, and if consumers can rely on other PFAS related claims, CR recently tested 3 recommended nonstick frying pans in our ratings at different price points. So, and it shows which 3 these are. The 2 ceramic pans didn't contain, okay, so that makes me feel better, at least about the PFOAs, is that the 2 ceramic pans did not contain any of the 96 PFAS our testers looked for. That's another thing. If you've got 12 to 16,000 different variations of chemical, like your test is looking for specific ones. So hopefully, the other ones are not present also. The PTFE coated pan, on the other hand, had measurable amounts of PFOA and several other PFAS. So the other was a PTFE coated pan. Okay, so that one actually had measurable amounts. Because CR's tests and research show that even products made without PFOA may contain the compound because of how they're manufactured, we have decided to no longer display PFOA-free in our ratings of nonstick cookware. Such claims may not be reliable for PTFE-coated products. Avoiding products made with PFAS, including pots and pans, may help protect your health and the environment, says Eric Boring, PhD, a CR chemist who oversaw our testing. And our findings suggest that consumers who want to avoid PFAS in their nonstick cookware may want to focus on products that claim to be PTFE free. So, when you got all these acronyms, because God knows the alphabet agencies love their acronyms. When I started one of the recent jobs I had the place was not a regulatory, or I was consulting. And they had not have heavy regulatory requirements, and they literally didn't know what I was talking about. But there are so many acronyms in the medical, like the regulated medical industry, that if you're talking to someone outside the industry, they're looking at you like you're speaking, I don't know, Martian or something. It's crazy, but they do love their acronyms. Kind of like the military. But he and other CR experts CR spoke with said that nonstick pans are made with a ceramic coating and carry PTFE claims such as the red copper and Always pans are far less likely to have forever chemicals. Of course, many uncoated pans, including those made with carbon steel and cast iron, are also unlikely to contain PFAS, although they might not prevent food from sticking as well or be quite as easy to clean. So, I'm thinking, if you look at the most inert, if you look at something that's a very inert material, that would be stainless steel. Because like if you look at something that's used in the pharmaceutical industry, when we make things, we use 316 stainless because it's very inert. It's not going to react with things, and that's the reason we use it or select it for manufacturing operations. But yeah, cleaning those things can be a real bitch. But so far I'm using the ceramic pan, but I'm hating it. Like, when you move from the Teflon coated pans to like a ceramic pan, I mean, it just really it just really sucks. Like, that was one thing about those Teflon coated pans, is it worked great, but again, it was a convenience that, oh wow, this is like magic. Oh my God. Yeah. Other shoe dropped, and it's full of, these god awful chemicals. But it's not just that, it's everything else. So my advice, in summary, I wanted to talk about this and let everybody know, where I'll link these articles below so that you can become educated on all of this. But this is a long story. There's a history that goes back a long ways. And we have been just, going forward at light speed. Innovation, new products, more conveniences, all of these things, all of this growth, racing towards the future. There's a lot of casualties of war with this. There's a lot of things that are going to come out, but I would say if you want to try to stay away from this and the microplastics that you're currently breathing in, yeah, they say that you're breathing in a lot of them. Just try to stay away from as much plastic as possible. Use glass. Try not to heat plastic ever, if possible. And, that's the only thing I can really tell you. And, and of course, like, I'm going to go back on the carnivore wagon and tell you, like, don't eat any packaged frozen foods. Try to eat, fresh meat and things like that. Whole foods. Stay away from anything that is uber processed, that sort of thing, because I don't know. There's a lot of contamination out there, and I don't know how many things are leaching and how many things are not. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows the full impact of all of this. And the more that time marches on and things advance, like, the more chemicals there are, the more new things there are, and the more new ways that people are manufacturing things and processing things. And there's consequences to all of this, unfortunately. But I hope this was informative. And again, I'm not here to scare everybody. And forever chemicals, don't seem to ever go away. And it is scary. But all we can do is inform ourselves, educate ourselves, and try to avoid all this stuff. So if you like the video, please give me a like. And if you want to subscribe, please do. And comment down below what you think and what you worry about. And let me hear from you. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.